Welcome into the PFF NFL podcast. Steve Palazzolo, along with Sam Monson. That's right, we're a little remote here today if you're watching on YouTube, but we appreciate you joining us live right now. We've got some weather up here, Sam, and your car can't really handle the snow.
Yeah, you say that, and yet it's never failed to make it into the office before.
Yeah, but it's always a little touch and go, so we couldn't risk it. And here in Cincinnati, even with an inch of snow or whatever we've been getting or whatever we got, it's a little. They don't really do well with the roads here.
Yeah, that's the bigger problem. Driving, yes. Yeah, look, it requires quite an early start to get in for the 7 a.m. Review podcast and snow overnight. And yeah, they're not the best in the world at sorting out the roads, etc. So, the Camaro in the morning, 5 a.m. or whatever, just didn't feel like a great idea.
All right, well, we've got a great recap for everybody. We're going 6 hours long here. It's Super Wild Card weekend, 5 whole games to review. Haven't even seen the Rams-Cardinals game yet, so that'll be on Wednesday.
For reference, we tweeted out a poll, 5 games to review on Monday, over under 2 hours. 91.5% of people replied that we would be over 2 hours to discuss five games.
They know us. They know us very well. I mean, what if we break into off-season talk? What if we break into rugby talk? You never know. You never know where we're going to go. But we are going
reason to. There were rugby plays.
There were rugby plays, and somebody also predicted that you would spend 27 minutes on the virtues of the rugby play and the lack of coordination by the Dallas Cowboys.
One day.
So do you want to just go in order through the weekend?
Sure. What is the order? I had Cincinnati, right?
Yeah.
First up.
So let's start with this. The hometown Cincinnati Bengals, their first playoff win since 1991. People got to send text messages about the Bengals winning a playoff game. They defeat the Raiders on Saturday afternoon. They're up 10 late. Raiders get within a score. Derek Carr throws a game-ending interception, and the Bengals hold on to win. And they're moving on to the divisional round. They'll play the Tennessee Titans next Saturday. Really, it ended up being a pretty good game. Bengals looked like they were in control. Raiders hung tough as they have all season. What are your thoughts on Bengals Raiders this weekend?
Yeah, I think that was the interesting thing, is that it looked like Cincinnati were going to have this in control. We're going to run away. We're going to put up a pretty big score. They were doing what they'd been doing for the last few weeks, which is just turn the ball over to Joe Burrow and say, go work, do your thing. Like, you're our best player, make it happen. And that's the smartest thing they can do. Like, they are so much better when they just let Joe Burrow cook. And then they sort of stalled out. They just stopped scoring in the second half. And all of a sudden that gave the Raiders a chance to start, slowly chipping away into this and find their way back and kind of drag themselves back into it. And it became a pretty good game by the end. Ultimately, they didn't quite get it done, but there was some impressive performances on both sides, I thought, in this game.
Yeah, again, I think Joe Burrow's the story for the Bengals. They've early last decade they played in a bunch of playoff games, right? And it was Andy Dalton at the helm, and Andy Dalton's he's a fine NFL quarterback. I don't think anybody.
He's not anymore. He was at the time,
At the time, let's not forget, right? I mean, he's probably a high end backup now. At the time, he was the average starter. He was like the mid tier. He was the guy. But I don't think a lot of people believed in the Bengals being able to go on a playoff run. It was like, nice team. They'll play in the wild card round and then they'd lose. And that's what they did year after year with Andy Dalton, with Marvin Lewis. It's a whole different world now for the Bengals. I thought early on, Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, by the way. I mean, it's the combination of both. I do think Burrow, we do our best to separate quarterbacks and receivers and all that fun stuff. But clearly, Burrow having Jamar Chase, who can win all over the place. Even just the montages that they would go when they went back through that game, and you saw, look at these vertical routes that Jamar Chase is running and the back shoulders off of it, or his ability to just stop on a dime to make everything look the same and just get open. That combination is incredible. Burrow's timing and accuracy, the first touchdown, he throws it CJ Uzomah like well before the break and just puts it right on him. Burrow was showing it all. I think everything was on display. Didn't really miss a whole lot of throws, if any. And there's just a different vibe was the point I was trying to get, right?
Yeah.
And it's not even just a vibe thing. It's just they're better. They're just better with Joe Burrow, who has a chance to be this high-end elite quarterback and give the Bengals a chance to win more than one playoff game and actually go on a run. And I think when you look back at this weekend, maybe the three best quarterback performances, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, and Patrick Mahomes, not to overrate just 1 week, but they've all, been very good quarterbacks, obviously. The AFC East, the AFC with their young quarterbacks looking really, really good.
Yeah, it was, and it wasn't even just hindsight. There was a feeling kind of going into this game, around Cincinnati, there is a level of hope that wasn't necessarily there with those Andy Dalton teams, even though they were really good. And, remember there was one year in particular where he had a whole group of receiving help. Dalton was playing well. The offensive line was good. There was never really that feeling that, oh, this team could win. Like this team could absolutely go wreck some people in the playoffs, go on a run, take home a Super Bowl. There is a feeling that Joe Burrow can do that. Like It might not happen, but there is that definite feeling that Joe Burrow is capable now of taking this team to places that it hasn't been before or hasn't been in a very long time. Like since the boss was playing, since the days where they were getting beaten by Joe Montana. Like that's the kind of hope that surrounds this team right now. And honestly, when you start looking at it, it isn't unreasonable. Like Joe Burrow is playing at this insane level right now that they haven't had a quarterback hit that level. I don't know when. Like Dalton never got to that point. I don't know that Carson Palmer ever got to that point when he was the guy leading this team. Like you might have to go back a long time to find the last time a Bengals quarterback was playing as well as Joe Burrow is right now. And then the other thing is, it feels like Zach Taylor, remember there was the feeling that the one thing that might undermine all this is that Zach Taylor in the playoffs kind of runs back to what he knows or what he thinks is the best sort of way of protecting this, which is conservative, hand the ball off to Joe Mixon, run, protect the lead, don't screw up. But it does feel like, almost the way that the Eagles had that epiphany halfway through the season. Oh, we're a power running team. Let's do this from now on. The Bengals, once they needed to win, were like, oh, you know what? This Joe Burrow to Jamar Chase thing is the best thing we have going. Let's just do that all the time. So all of a sudden, that's the game plan, right? And it changes this team. They are so much more dangerous when it runs through Joe Burrow than when it runs, off the platform of Joe Mixon.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. Now this wasn't as high powered of an offensive performance as it was against the Ravens or the Chiefs a few weeks back, but that was
it kind of was in the first half, right? Like they scored in the first 4 possessions. They were passing the ball on first down. It looked like that, and then it just kind of hit a wall and stalled out.
I want to just to highlight a couple of performances on Cincinnati. Of course, everything's over at PFF.com. Everything's been graded throughout the weekend. You guys get 25% off using the promo code NFLPOD. You get all these grades and stats at PFF.com. Jesse Bates making a ton of plays for the Bengals defensively, all over the place. Multiple pass breakups, one of his best games of the season. You Trey Hendrickson, who, as we look back, will be one of the better, for this year at least, one of the better free agent signings of last offseason. He was a guy that, broke out in his final year with the Saints last season and carried it into this year. Had the strip sack and just, overall a really good season from Trey Hendrickson. I think that's the other subtle key for the Bengals here. Defense making just enough plays. I don't think anybody's afraid of this Bengals defense in the playoffs, but if you just get a couple of those key plays like from Jesse Bates and from Trey Hendrickson, it makes them dangerous.
The other Jesse Bates was making a ton of plays in this game, like driving on a crossing route for a pass breakup, had a massive hit on somebody as well. He was a really big part of that secondary. Mike Hilton against Hunter Renfrow was such a fun matchup. Like Renfrow right now has basically been green lit to run all those routes and nobody else is allowed to run because they take too long to develop. Yeah. They've just said, screw it, run whatever you like. We'll figure it out. And Mike Hilton was the poor guy basically tasked with covering that in this game. Did a pretty good job of doing that. Like gave up, I think, 1 catch to Renfrow over the course of it. And then this game also had some weird plays and officiating. your favorite topic. The weird play first. What was Peyton Barber doing?
Oh, not the whistle play.
Peyton Barber on the kickoff. The Bengals, the kick shanks the kick, essentially. It looks like it's going to head out of bounds short of the goal line. And then here's the thing, right? Like he fields it in bounds and runs out of bounds and essentially ends up costing them 20 yards of field position, backs the team up right next to the goal line. What you're supposed to do is, get your foot out of bounds, then field it, because then it counts as the kick went out of bounds. I think, so it looked ridiculous. It looked like the dumbest thing you can do as a kick return guy. When you look at the replay, I think it was slightly less dumb than it looked, because it looked like the ball was going to go out of bounds anyway. And like, if you just left it, it would have been fine. When you look at the kind of replay that was right down the line, it kind of, when it last bounced, it looked like it checked back slightly and might not have actually gone out of bounds at all. So all of a sudden he's kind of running for this ball. The last bounce kind of kicks it back inside or back up. And now he has to kind of quickly on the fly running towards it, realize, crap, this isn't going out. I need to field it, but I also need to get out of bounds to do that. And just didn't get his feet and hands done correctly, on the run at the time, and ended up looking like a complete tit.
Yeah, it's a tricky play because, right, his, like, as you mentioned, the goal is to like straddle out of bounds. If you're standing out of bounds, you catch it, it counts as out of bounds. It's a penalty. Execution wasn't there, but that's the risk. Like, you can't just let the ball go either, because you don't know where bouncing football is going to go. It looks like it's going to go out of bounds. It could bounce back, as it did, and I think you described that well. You just the thought process was right. Let me try to. It looks like you're drinking an oversized coffee mug, by the way. That looks.
I am. I got this for Christmas.
How big is that? Oh, look at that.
It's pretty big.
That's the Grinch? What is that? What's on there?
It's the Grinch, yeah. Christmas Grinch.
Oh, yeah, looking good. It looks like a 32-ounce mug in your hands.
Yeah, I mean, it's not small. I haven't measured the ounceage, but it's, yeah.
Let me know. Let me know what you could put in there.
It
just looks hilarious on the screen. I love it. Leave your comments on Sam's Grinch mug here and on the YouTube channel. Anyway, yeah, so plays like that where you completely lose field position. Raiders had no chance when they're backed up like that, but the thought process was right. Special teams. Now the whistle gate, because you got to throw gate on top of everything here.
Of course.
What happened with the whistle? Joe Burrow's scrambling out to the right.
I mean, it's very simple what happened.
Throws back across his body, throws a touchdown. The whistle does blow at some point during the play, though NFL officiating disagrees.
Well, yeah. So Burrow running is about to step out of bounds, throws the ball before he steps out of bounds to a receiver in the end zone for a touchdown. Before the receiver catches the ball, a whistle blows, which by NFL rules means the play is done. It's over, and you got to do over. Like, inadvertent whistle, the play is dead. We made a mistake, and we just have to, sorry, the touchdown doesn't count. We start over. What they did, I think, is essentially get together and realize, we just took a touchdown off the board by mistake. So the first point is, they were trying to make a big deal on the broadcast of, oh, look, the whistle blows and number 25 holds up. He stops playing. You're like, no, he was just beaten. Like, he stopped running because he was 3 yards away from the guy in the end zone catching the ball and wasn't getting there. You know what I mean? Like, he stopped play in the way that you stop play when you realize you can't make the play you need to make and you just start jogging to the end of the play. So I think they got together, realized that it doesn't affect anything, right? Like, we screwed this up. The guy on the sideline, who, by the way, is ready to blow the whistle before the ball comes out of Burrow's hands. Like, this dude blew it completely. I think they just got together and went, look, we screwed this up. Let's just fudge it, right? We just say the whistle came out after the guy caught the ball and let's move on. NFL officiating essentially came out and they didn't say that the whistle happened after. They say the officials got together and determined that the whistle happened afterwards. So NFL officiating was very careful with their wording and essentially said that the officials determined on the field that the whistle happened after the pass was caught. Therefore, everything's fine, right?
It's good to see NFL officiating and the officially misleading us
Yes.
and not having
Now,
their own take.
but here's the thing. So one, that officiating crew was a disaster in this game, right? And it's already come out. I think there was reports, I forget who had them, that like that crew's not working again this playoffs. You know what I mean? They're done. Like whatever review process NFL officiating has, you guys fail, and you're not officiating another game this postseason.
But real quick, not necessarily because of this game, but probably because they were on the low end of the 8, the 6 that were needed for this weekend.
Well, whatever. But this game didn't help. You know what I mean? Like whatever
Sure.
this game, they failed whatever process there is. They're not moving up the ladder. But the point is, like, that's the right outcome. They screwed up. They blew the whistle when they shouldn't have. But I would 100% rather they got together and went, you know what? This doesn't actually affect the play. We screwed it up. The worst thing we can do is take a touchdown off the board because this jackass over on the sideline accidentally blew his whistle. Like, let's pretend he didn't and just move on. That is so much better than everybody getting together and going, yeah, you know what? You're right. You can hear the whistle blow slightly before he caught it. So let's completely invalidate a good touchdown and potentially change this game completely. I am 100% on board for what they did, even if they made it balls of it and technically like fudge the rules.
I'm with you. I think they got it. It would be far more controversial if they took the touchdown off the board. Now, by the letter of the law, they should have taken the touchdown off the board.
Yes, it would have been technically correct, but morally way worse.
Yes, there would be far more controversy because the inadvertent whistle. I mean, it was just way too early. Burrow wasn't even that close to the sideline. It wasn't like it was
bad.
He was pretty clearly inbounds. When you're watching the game, Sam, it felt really early, didn't it? Because you're not used to hearing whistles during the game. It felt like I heard it almost like as Burrow was throwing. I think as they replayed it over and over and over again, maybe they doctored it. As they were replaying it over and over and over again, it did sound like the whistle was like just before the catch.
Yeah.
And I don't think it affected anything. I do
really
think it was a great play.
That's the thing. So if it had been different, where like you could see multiple Raiders defenders, go stop play, and we're like, oh, the game's up, like whistle dead, done, and then somebody had done something like then you would have a point. But honestly, you could see that the only guy that stopped up was it Merrick 25, who was beat. Like the reason he stopped was because he was beaten in the end zone for the touchdown, not because the whistle blew. At which point, I think the right call is to just go, yeah, we made a mess of this, but you know what? We're way better just pretending it didn't happen and moving on and dealing with NFL officiating's post-mortem on it afterwards. So, like, technically the wrong call, but morally the right call. And I think that's a way better way of doing it than the reverse, getting it technically right, but morally absolutely screwing up this game.
Yep, I think they got it right ultimately.
One more point that I wanted to make about this is the noise out of the jungle, the noise out of that stadium was different to anything I've heard for a Bengals game, I think ever. Like the atmosphere in that stadium, for their first playoff win since 91. Like this game just felt absolutely different to a regular Cincinnati home game. Like the noise out of that stadium was incredible. Derek Carr and the Raiders, like they did that thing that I've only noticed recently, but I think teams have been doing for a while, where you like duct tape up the hole of your helmet so you can try and hear better, instead of having the hole where all the noise comes in. They like seal it up. And so, because you're expecting significant noise, like the Raiders were doing that. Like this was a serious sort of home advantage atmosphere that you don't really associate with Cincinnati most of the time.
Yeah, it was impressive. And look, I think, Cincinnati fans are hungry for just the ability to win. Like I said, I'm sure they were excited for Andy Dalton playoff games and stuff like that. But deep down, it's like, I don't think we have a shot. Like Bengals fans truly believe they have a shot. And it's because of Joe Burrow and it's because of Jamar Chase. And not to revisit Jamar Chase versus Penei Sewell. Penei Sewell is a fantastic player. But again, the Jamar Chase factor, like at any time, this dude can take it to the house. And not only take it to the house, at least get open for 10 to 15 yards over and over and over again because of that threat. Makes the Bengals so dangerous here. On the other side, I thought Derek Carr did some nice things. There was plays left on the table and everything, but a 3rd and 17 seam route to Darren Waller. His other great throw, corner route to Hunter Renfrow, put it right on his hands. Renfrow couldn't hold on. I thought Carr did some good stuff. Obviously, doesn't connect, when they get to the tight red zone. It doesn't matter that it was an interception or incomplete at the end, but they couldn't complete the comeback. But I thought Derek Carr did some nice things in this game.
Yeah, he did. I mean, the Raiders generally this season deserve a lot of credit for getting to where they got to. They shouldn't be here. Like they made the playoffs on merit, whereas Pittsburgh made the playoffs, but they kind of backed in and needed help to get there. The Raiders needed help as well, but I think they won games that they shouldn't necessarily have won, and we're there because Derek Carr was making some of these incredible plays down the stretch. They were doing some weird things, like it was like a battle of bad offensive lines. And that was one of the things heading into this game, like which line is going to be the bigger problem, the Raiders generally with their issues, or Cincinnati's line, which hasn't been great going up against that Raiders pass rush, which has been legit. The Raiders, they didn't help themselves sometimes, like sliding the entire line away from Trey Hendrickson, leaving him one-on-one with a tight end, like immediate sack. That's probably not a great idea. And made even worse by the fact that it seemed like they did that specifically to be able to like max protect and get a deeper shot off. It's like, yeah, but like, remember, that's isolating their best pass rusher and a tight end. Not usually a great recipe for like long pass protection. But yeah, Derek Carr played well. He was delivering some passes. I think as much as Darren Waller hasn't had a huge amount of success when they haven't had Henry Ruggs and that deep threat and the ability to just kind of scare teams deep, he does change their offense. Like he has the ability to make those big plays and to just be a matchup problem. And they took advantage of that sometimes in the game.
Yeah, I think, Raiders fans, I don't know where you land at the end of the season. That the Raiders, they won some close games to get into the playoffs. That definitely think they overachieved compared to what the expectations were. It looked like they were ready to settle in exactly where the expectations were, a 500 type of team, right? And then they win these games down the stretch to get into the playoffs. Zay Jones has emerged as a nice weapon for them as well. So there might be something to build from there. The Max Crosby breakout season. So there was a lot of good, I think, for the Raiders, but they were just overmatched against this Bengals team, right? They just couldn't keep up. I thought the Bengals did a good job of exploiting Vegas in their underneath zones early on. And again, there's no real Jamar Chase answer unless Joe Burrow just misses the throw, right? I mean, that's pretty much the extent of it.
I mean, the other thing is in this game, like Burrow and Chase have generally been absolutely carving teams up when they've been playing man coverage, like the Chiefs, the 3rd and 27 play, we're one-on-one down the sideline. Let's just heave it up. Jamar Chase will make the play. The Raiders play a lot more zone, and they were just as deadly. Like they haven't necessarily been as good against zone, but this is kind of this world that Joe Burrow is in right now. It doesn't matter what you show him. It doesn't matter if you show him man coverage or zone coverage. That dude is in the zone, and he is just carving guys up. And Chase, the same thing. Like right at the start of this game, Ben Stockwell, what is his title these days? Like,
I don't know.
General analysis guru was texting me like they better get some help for face on like ASAP. Otherwise, this is going to be a problem all day. It wasn't one-on-one in man coverage, but just locking him down in that zone on that side. It was just too easy. Pitch and catch Burrow to Chase, and that's what was happening certainly in the first half. And then, like I said, they kind of stalled out and the game got close.
Yeah, and even with that, like they featured Chase early on, but then you can kind of see, okay, you do have T. Higgins, you have Azama. I mean, Burrow's best throw was the same pass that Derek Carr made down the stretch, the seam route to Azama, just pinpoint. The Bengals have a lot of weapons, man. So Jamar Chase setting the tone, but then they have other options beyond that. So Cincinnati's going to play Tennessee. Of course, we'll preview all of the games on Thursday. Divisional round is always such a great week, but I like this matchup. I like matchups we haven't seen, especially. We'll have a couple rematches. We'll have some games we haven't seen, but this one we haven't seen. Bengals against the Titans. I think it's certainly going to be a challenge for Tennessee, and I don't think anybody's going to be surprised if the Bengals end up in the AFC Championship coming out of this game with a win. So we'll be previewing that game on Thursday. Do you want a chance to win the ultimate game day feast, whether it's football success or financial savvy? Winning starts with asking us questions. Would you like to know what it's like behind the scenes with Al on Sunday Night Football? Absolutely. How about a need to know on your financial future? Western and Southern's teaming up with PFF's Chris Collinsworth to share insights that can help put you ahead on both your financial and fantasy scoreboards. Every submission earns you a chance to win the ultimate feast to celebrate football's favorite Sunday. So listen closely. We'll cover your catering for up to $2,500. Coordinate your order from a restaurant near you and have it delivered on February 13th, 2022. Don't forget to check out the Chris Collinsworth podcast and Western and Southern's Instagram for answers to the best questions each week. So you can submit your questions at westernsouthern.com/feast. One more time, it's westernsouthern.com/feast. If you're watching on YouTube, check out the link in the description below. Remember, with Western and Southern, you can rest assured on game day. And now back to our playoff action, Sam, Saturday night. So by the way, there were two good games, two close games out of 5 so far. I'm expecting a good Rams-Cardinals game here to balance it out a little bit.
Okay.
But the Bills destroy the New England Patriots, 47-14. The first time in NFL history that a team just scored a touchdown on every single drive. They're calling it a perfect game, but they did miss 2 extra points. But anyway, touchdowns on every drive. Josh Allen, pretty much unstoppable. And they're up 7-0. Play of the game, Micah Hyde with an interception that just probably shouldn't even have been.
Yeah.
Just an incredible play. But the Bills rolled, man, and showed what they are capable of as a team.
Yeah, there's an alternate universe somewhere where Micah Hyde's a half step late or just doesn't read the ball in the air as well, just doesn't make an insane grab over the top of the receiver, and the Patriots get a touchdown, answer the Bills drive, and it's 7-7, and it's a different ball game. Now, it probably doesn't matter because, as he said, Buffalo scored on every drive, scored a touchdown. Every time they had the ball, touchdown. So the Patriots were going to be they were going to have their backs up against it anyway, unless they figured out a way on defense to slow them down, which wasn't happening. But that did the game almost ended as a contest then and there. When the Bills get that interception, they then turn it into a touchdown. All of a sudden, you're 14-0 up. The announcers on the game had been saying, right from the get-go, the Patriots do not want to be in a shootout. They don't want to be in a sprint. They want this game to drag out, to be ugly, to be low scoring, and almost immediately they're in a 14-0 hole. And now Mac Jones has got to be a different quarterback to the one you would expect him to be in the game. And it changes the game. And so it became this massive score, but in a weird way, I was bizarrely fascinated by this absolute smackdown of the Patriots. Josh Allen just put himself in this zone where you're watching it and you're saying, all right, we're still in the first half, and forget this game. This game's done. The Patriots are going home. The thing is, though, if Allen is playing like this, nobody can beat the Bills. Nobody. There's not a team in the playoffs right now that can stop Buffalo if Josh Allen is playing the way he's playing right now. He was absolutely unstoppable. Whatever you needed him to do, whether it was on the ground, whether it was just bouncing around in the pocket, immediate snap reaction, just fires a bullet to a dude over the middle, right into his hands. Anything you needed him to do, Allen was playing basically not just perfect football, but perfect football in such a diverse way that you can't stop him. Remember, this is okay. They were down some injured players, the Patriots, missing cornerbacks. But this is a pretty good defense that Josh Allen made look like it was the worst defense in the NFL. That was nuts.
Before that, I think you're absolutely right. Allen was incredible. The other thing that went in Buffalo's favor, his first touchdown to Dawson Knox, Josh Allen admitted he was throwing that thing away. It looked like a ridiculous throw. He said he was throwing it away. And it is interesting because we have to grade all these plays, right?
I don't want to know that.
Yeah, I don't want to know that either. But
thinking that it was just amazing.
I know this is like Montana to Clark. Was that really a throwaway instead of one of the best plays in NFL? It's very Montana to Clark-esque, right?
Yeah.
You kind of throw it up, the tight end comes out of nowhere and makes the catch. But so I want to give Buffalo all of the credit in the world, and you're absolutely right with Josh Allen. I do think every year, though, during wild card weekend, and this happened more when teams had buys, where we completely overreact to wild card weekend, and then the next weekend, remember, every team that won would go face a team that had a bye. It's different now because the Bills are going to play the Chiefs. Both teams played, but the wild card teams would go play a team that had a bye, and all the wild card teams, like the vibes felt great. They just came off a win. They looked like they're unstoppable, but then they went to go play a team that was better than them, and you kind of forgot about it. My only point here is like Allen was unstoppable. It was his highest graded game of the season. So your point is, if Allen plays like this, yeah, I mean, Bills are going to the Super Bowl and they're going to win it. But he's probably not going to put up a 94.8 grade every single week. But this is what the Bills are capable of, right?
Yeah.
Whether that was a throwaway or not, forget about it. Still didn't miss any throws. He had 4 incompletions, 5 touchdowns, and the Bills just make you defend everything because Allen, as a runner, he has the highest rushing grade in the NFL among quarterbacks. He could do it as a scrambler. They do it in the design run game, and he is just lasers all over the place. One of those touchdowns was Juwan Williams in coverage, kind of playing cover 2. And in cover 2, you're not just playing the flat like in Madden where there's like, who's this big circle, cover the flat. You're supposed to like get depth and then work up. Juwan Williams kind of got some depth, but Josh Allen threw it 45 yards just over his head. Like just making throws that you're not supposed to make. And yes, that is absolutely unstoppable. Josh Allen was incredible. It was his best game of the year. I do think the Patriots were hurt by some of their injuries in the secondary, but the Bills took advantage of it. They would run those RPOs or the play action, and Allen would hit the post route behind it. And the Patriots didn't have any answers defensively. So, yeah, the Bills are extremely dangerous when Josh Allen plays like that. Now we'll see if he can even just be a fraction of that going forward, and the Bills are, going to be unstoppable.
Yeah, I mean, this is his 6th game with a PFF game grade above 90 in the last 2 years. The game directly following the 90 game, last year, the first time it was a 76 overall grade in the next game. The second time it was a 65. And then this season, he's followed them up with a 77, with a 43, and with a 70. So generally, there hasn't been a game within, 15 grading points of the 90 graded game the next time up. So you're right. It's a reasonable point that, like, yeah, if Josh Allen plays this way, they are completely unstoppable. On the other hand, he has never once backed up a 90-plus graded game with another game even in the same vicinity. Now, there was a stretch last season where he had a bunch of like 88 type of games. He had like 4 of those on the bounce. So he is capable of playing really, really well for a stretch, but never backed it up with those 90-plus games. What this game felt like to me, though, was like the Bills have been beaten up by the Patriots for like 20 years, right? Tom Brady, Bill Belichick dominated that division, dominated the AFC, dominated the NFL. And the Bills have kind of been the team on the bad end of that. They've been like the little brother that just got beat down for like 10 years of growing up by his older siblings. And it felt like that little brother, learned jujitsu or something. Like they went away, learned how to fight. And then like
Josh Allen is jujitsu.
Yeah, like the first rumble with the older brothers, like it's like it's different. All of a sudden the older brother is getting like tied into a pretzel with his like foot over behind his head, and the Bills are just like hammering away, giggling as all the older brothers are just getting an absolute ass whooping. This felt like 20 years worth of being beat up all coming back in one game, and it was like, oh god, just end this. Like they're done. Like tap out. The Patriots are busy tapping out, and the Bills are like, nope, we got more points to put up. We have more embarrassment to heap on you. There are 20 years worth of like this happening to us that we want to get back in this game. We are going to keep stomping until you are done, until the time hits 000 and we're out of here.
Yeah, the Bills only beat the Patriots 3 times during the Brady era, I believe the number was. They've now won 4 over the last 2 years. So, yes, they've come back with a vengeance. But it's not just that, right? I mean, remember Narrative Street, man.
Mm-hmm.
Not just about a month ago, the Patriots go into Buffalo.
Yeah.
And this was like, there were takes that Belichick's game plan should be in the Hall of Fame, and Sean McDermott should be embarrassed and all this stuff. There was a legitimate question to Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer, the two starting safeties of the Bills. Are you embarrassed by your run defense where they stormed off? You know, they were upset. I mean, we're barely a month removed from that Monday Night Football game where it looked like, well, the genius is back, this masterclass and all that stuff. And this is the fascinating thing about the way the schedule played out, that the Bills and Patriots played 2 times in 3 weeks in December with the division on the line, and then again in the playoffs in the wild card round. But Josh Allen's last 90 grade before this one was against the Patriots, right? I mean, it was in New England with the division on the line. That was the single biggest division odds changing game of the season with everything on the line. And to your point, little brother came back with jiu-jitsu against big brother. I mean, and with all the answers, and they did it again. And now I'm going to flip the tables again and say, is that a bad thing going forward for the Bills? Is there so much emotion in these divisional games that it's not that you can't get up for a Chiefs game and all that stuff. It's just so tough to sustain it. It's really impressive what the Bills have done, man. It's very impressive that they flipped that whole narrative, right? Like people aren't going to remember that Monday night game where Mac Jones threw the ball 3 times and won. They're going to remember the Bills winning in New England and then just stomping the Patriots in Buffalo in the wild card round.
I mean, I got this game completely wrong going into it. I thought that the Bills were still vulnerable to those power running type of teams. And I said, look, Buffalo, the good news for Buffalo is that they are actually built to beat the Chiefs now. And if they get through this game, like that's who's up next. And, you know, that's the team that you've designed this whole thing to beat, to get past. Now you expected it to be in the AFC Championship game. It's going to happen a round earlier, but what the hell? Like that's the team you've designed this entire thing to beat. The problem is you need to get through a team that you're not particularly well suited to beat beforehand. Now they just took that and went, okay, like absolutely annihilated that team. They were not physically controlled. That defense showed that they are still absolutely legit and they can go up against a power team. Now, were they helped by the fact that they got out to that 14-0 lead almost immediately? And would it have been different if the Patriots had answered? It was 7-all, and now you have to sort of contend with that balanced game plan a bit more, you know, maybe. But the way their offense was playing, it wouldn't have mattered. Like that was the big thing. But they've shown that they're capable of now beating any team in the AFC, whether it's Kansas City, whether they have to face Tennessee or anybody else. Like that defensive performance from Buffalo was so impressive. And I don't think that this wasn't like, remember Tennessee earlier in the season, you're like, there's only so many times you can go to that emotional well sequentially before there's just nothing there anymore. And you don't have that to count on. Tennessee was able to do that. I don't think Buffalo even tapped into that well in this game. Like, I don't think they needed to be especially hyped up for this game. They were just in a zone. And when they were in that zone, it was fun. Like they enjoyed it. Like this game was like a balm for everything that they've been dealing with in the last 20 years of these absolute humiliations by the Patriots. This was the flip side of that. So I don't think it was like taxing on an emotional level. I think it was actually like it was adding emotional pitch to that well. Like they were stocking up on what they're going to need in the future. The danger for me would be not that they've like exhausted the supply of that fever pitch kind of emotional supply. It's that you almost like you kind of get complacent. You're like, wow, that was easy. Like, this is great. And we're rolling. Nobody can stop us. And you kind of not overlook Kansas City, but you get too caught up in the fact that you were just incredible in that last game and don't go back to that well at all because you didn't need it in this first game.
Yeah, we'll talk Chiefs in a little bit, of course, but yeah, that's going to be such a fascinating matchup. Josh Allen versus Patrick Mahomes. Again, they both Chiefs started slow, but Mahomes just, firing off 5 touchdown passes in like 12 minutes of game time. So the Chiefs are still the Chiefs. Bills beat them earlier this season. Titans beat the Bills earlier this season. So there's a lot of storylines remaining in the AFC here. I think the bottom line for the Bills, this is what they're capable of, right? This is their high end where Josh Allen can do no wrong. Devin Singletary's running the ball hard. You can't cover Stephon Diggs in the Bills receivers. Dawson Knox is catching throwaways. Everything went right. Discuss this, but the Bills also, here's why they're good. They have one of the stingiest pass defenses in the entire NFL. And they didn't let the Patriots have any comeback. Patriots get the ball in the second half, interception on the first drive on a tipped pass. I mean, they are just laying the hammer. But this Micah Hyde interception, Sam, you're a former safety. Jordan Poyer was like, this is the best play I've ever seen. I mean, Micah Hyde, like a center fielder, just straight put his head down, sprinted to a spot, and made a catch. In a spot, he shouldn't have been there. He just should not have been in the place that he was. I don't even know if it's, I mean, you could say Mac Jones floated it a little bit, or maybe he just didn't even anticipate that Hyde could be there. But as a quarterback, I don't know if you are, given the depth that Micah Hyde was at when the ball was thrown. And yeah, Mac Jones definitely floated some passes, and you could tell the ball looked different coming out of his hand than Josh Allen's.
Sure.
But I don't even know if this was a bad play by the quarterback as much as just an incredible play by Micah Hyde.
It really wasn't. Because after that, people were saying, it's a well thrown ball from Mac Jones, and Micah Hyde just took it away, and obviously it ends up as an interception, and that's what we do at PFF. You look at the throw and you're like, well, what actually happened? It wasn't a bad pass at all. I mean, obviously it was going to land in Aguilar's hands, but that's not quite the same thing as it was a really good pass. You're kind of looking at it saying, yeah, like maybe it could have been a yard to the left and a little bit further out in front of him, and just to properly take that away. On the other hand, it's one of those plays where he's not supposed to be there. Like it's too good a play. There is a throw that Mac Jones could have made that would have eliminated that possibility on the play. That being said, that throw should have ended up in a touchdown almost every time. And the safety just made an insane play, not just to get there, but to actually catch that ball going up over the top of the receiver once he did is kind of nuts. And he's definitely helped by the fact that Aguilar is a specific type of receiver who is never going to high point the football, right? He just doesn't do it. Like he's one of those players where when a deep ball is coming in, Aguilar is going to let it drop into the bucket. You know what I mean? He's got his eyes up there and he's just going to let it drop in. There are receivers that, regardless of the trajectory of the ball, will default to, instead of letting it drop into a bucket, to going up and trying to get it over here, right? And if they had if Aguilar had put his hands up and tried to contest the ball like a foot, 2 feet higher, maybe he wouldn't have caught it, but he might have stopped Hyde catching it. But the fact that he was willing to let it drop into his hands is kind of what allowed Hyde to be able to get in over the top, make a catch that was completely uncontested and take it away. But that was one of the best defensive plays of the season, and potentially one of the most game-changing defensive plays of the season. I know the story of this game is that Bills offense was unstoppable. They had the quote-unquote perfect game. They scored a touchdown every time they had the ball. So whatever they did on defense probably wouldn't have mattered. But I do think the game flow is important. And if this might have been a different game had the Patriots answered and it had been 7-7 with the Bills getting the ball back versus, okay, you're 7-0 up, they score a touchdown, 14-0, now it's game over.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't have been as big of a beatdown, but I still don't see how the Patriots would have stopped the Bills.
Right. But it's easy to say that having just seen them being unstoppable. You know what I mean? There's no way of knowing how much of them being unstoppable was momentum building on momentum, building on momentum, you know what I mean? As opposed to, oh, this is still a close game, and all of a sudden everybody tightens up and you're not in that free-flowing zone.
You're a momentum guy, huh?
Big momentum guy all the time. Can I tell you what this game reminded me of, though? Or Josh Allen and the offense in particular?
Yes.
So I had to do some research on this because I wanted the actual quote. This game reminded me of The Terminator, right? You know the original movie, 1984, Michael Biehn, Arnie. I don't remember what that woman's name is that played Sarah Connor. But the way that right at the start of this game, the Terminator is just this relentless killing machine that you can't get away from. He's coming, nothing you can do. He's there. He's the way that Bills offense was. There's nothing you can do about it. It is coming. It is going to murder you, and that's it. So there's a point in the movie where Michael Biehn's character rescues Sarah Connor. They're in this car. They're hauling ass away from the Terminator, and he's kind of giving her the SP, the quick rundown of hey, this is what's happening. There's a machine here coming to kill you, and there's no, we're going to get the hell out of here. So he had this quote where, quote, "He's not a man, he's a machine, a Terminator. It can't be bargained with, it can't be reasoned with, it doesn't feel pity or remorse or fear, and it absolutely will not stop ever until you are dead." That's what Josh Allen was doing to the Patriots in this game.
That's Josh Allen on Saturday night in Buffalo against the Patriots.
It
The
really
Terminator.
was. Like, that's what this felt like. The Josh Allen and the Bills offense is just going to keep on stomping until you are dead and out of the playoffs, and this game is over, and there is nothing you can do about it.
Well, we'll see if the Terminator can keep it up against Kansas City. It looked bleak that well, I don't want to say bleak, but it looked like the Steelers might be able to give the Chiefs a game. We'll get into it later, but I think we got the matchup that people want to see. Bills Chiefs again in the playoffs for the second straight year. Josh Allen versus Patrick Mahomes. You've got Joe Burrow versus Ryan Tannehill on the other side. The AFC just looking strong. It's going to be fun. And again, we'll preview all that stuff on Thursday.
Yeah, we'll get into that on Thursday. The one point I wanted to make about that is, remember last year, this is not the first time that we're going to go into a game and it's like, hey, Josh Allen is all of a sudden the better quarterback. You know, Josh Allen looks better than Mahomes right now. And then like last year, Josh Allen kind of imploded. We're going to have that narrative again, and this time it's actually right. Like right now, Josh Allen is better than Patrick Mahomes, and kind of has been all season.
Mahomes I don't know. Mahomes got back on track. That was the best I think I've seen him play in a while. That Steelers defense was bad.
I mean, it was the best he's played in a while, and it still wasn't as good as the Terminator over there.
No, I agree. So if you just take the last 2 seasons of play and stack him up, Josh Allen's been a better quarterback. The whole body of work over their careers, Patrick Mahomes has been a better quarterback. So do with that.
But I think this is the first. Yeah, this is kind of the first time where that narrative actually might be true. You know what I mean? Like over pretty much any period you want to pick, Josh Allen's in better form and playing better right now.
Well, as you know, we're on to the divisional round of the NFL playoffs, and DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, is celebrating with a huge odds boost for new customers. Counting down to Super Bowl 56, new customers can get 56-1 odds on any team. Bet just $5 and get $280 in free bets if your team wins. If Sportsbook isn't yet available in your state, you can still get in on the action in the divisional round. Everyone can play for huge cash prizes with DraftKings daily fantasy football contests, and DraftKings is giving all new customers a free shot at millions of dollars in total prizes with their first deposit. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code PFF and get 56-1 odds on any NFL team. Bet just $5 and win $280 in free bets if your team wins. It's promo code PFF for 56-1 odds at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Don't know how long this is going to last, so get in on the action. Must be 21 or older. New Jersey, Indiana, Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Minimum $5 deposit, $1 wager required. One per customer. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, let's get to the Sunday slate. We've got the Eagles and the Bucks. Bucks get up 31-0. Game ends 31-15. And yeah, the defending Super Bowl champs. Essentially the 2 versus 7 games. The Bucks really took care of business with the Eagles, and then the Chiefs, even though the Steelers hung tough for about a quarter and a few minutes, eventually ran away. So these 2 versus 7 matchups did not exactly deliver this week as far as entertainment value goes. But Bucks take care of business, move on. They'll be hosting the winner of the Rams-Cardinals game next week.
Yeah, Kevin Clark of The Ringer had a tweet yesterday that was like, are we sure that we need a 7th playoff team? Like it hasn't. There's not an awful lot about these games that have made you convinced that, yeah, that's the thing we definitely need, this extra team in the postseason.
So last year's, I think it was Bills Colts. Bills Colts was good. And then I think it was Saints Bears, and it was never... I think it was close on the scoreboard, but I don't think anybody ever really believed Mitchell Trubisky was going to lead the Bears to a victory. But
no, but it wasn't.
2 versus 7 was not. Bad. Yeah, 2 versus 7 was not really great.
This was the game that really didn't, I think, unfold the way it looked like it might. When, for start, the weather didn't materialize. Right, the talk of, hey, it's going to rain, it's going to be windy, it's going to neutralize.
It was windy. The wind did have an effect a little bit. I think
it wasn't windy enough that it eliminated anything. It eliminated a passing attack from anybody, and the rain didn't show up and kind of add to it. And so essentially the point I'm making is that the Patriots passing offense that was potentially going to be blunted, or the Patriots, the Buccaneers passing attack that was potentially going to be blunted wasn't. So Tom Brady was able to go out there and do what he does. And they weren't the run defense for Tampa Bay wasn't hampered by, bad footing or whatever. So they held up in that area. They also sold out against it, and at which point Philadelphia just had nothing to give them. Like, they didn't have anything. So the Bucs, I think, had a really good game plan on offense. I don't think it was weather related. I think they just decided this is the way to beat this team. Brady just went out there and went, you know what? The only good thing on your defense is your defensive line. I'm going to make sure it doesn't have an impact for the first decent period of this game. Immediate time to throw, average depth of target, a couple of yards downfield. His average depth of target for the game was, I think, 4.1 yards. His average time to throw was 2.2 seconds.
5.1, which it ended up at.
All of which was faster and shorter in the first half. They were just out there lightning, dealing the ball away. And at which point there's nothing you can do as a defense unless you're going to play more aggressive and take away the quick stuff, which obviously is opening up the potential that he just bombs you over the top for a 50-yard touchdown. Brady is one of the quarterbacks that's capable of doing that and carving you to pieces.
Yeah, they kind of did this the first matchup against the Eagles because we talk about it every week, right? They play a lot of zone. They never let you win over the top. So Brady's the best at, taking all the underneath stuff, getting the ball out of his hands. So yeah, that was clearly the game plan. For the most part, it did take the pass rush out. Brady did get sacked 4 times. I think there were reasons for that. Tristan Wirfs hurt his ankle on a play. And then Ryan Jensen also got hurt at the center. So Wirfs, probably the best right tackle in the NFL right now, tried to come back in, played on one leg. He got beat up. Ryan Kerrigan was just feasting on one leg of Tristan Wirfs, and then Josh Wells, the backup, with his bull rush. So they did get to Brady on a couple key third downs. And that, I don't want to say that kept it close because the Bucs got up 31-0, but that kept it from being 40-0.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, the Bucs, without Chris Godwin, without Antonio Brown, showing, okay, they could run quick passing game, mix in the run here and there. It was a pretty good game overall for the Bucs offense, and then stalled out a little bit in the second half as they took their foot off the gas.
Yeah, I think Bruce Arians made this point after the game that once Tom Brady figures you out, you're dead, you're done. And he figured the Eagles out the first time. So the second time, with almost nothing changed, was just lambs to the slaughter. If you're going to give Tom Brady, here's the game plan, and all of a sudden the light goes on for Brady, and he's like, oh, okay, I understand how to beat this game plan now. Forget it.
I thought Troy Aikman said something I hadn't thought about yet when it comes to Brady, because we talk a lot about the RPOs, and just to reiterate to our audience, a run pass option is not a play where the quarterback's going to run. It's a called running play where the quarterback can either hand it off or pull it and throw. And Aikman made the point, I think Brady probably told him in the production meeting, Brady doesn't like RPOs because he feels like he knows what the defense is going to do before the play, not after it. He'd rather read the defense before the play, whereas the RPO gives you an easy read after the play, and it always makes the defense wrong, right? You're putting the ball into the belly of a running back, and if one player does one thing, you do the opposite, right? If the one player plays the run, you throw it. If the one player plays the pass, you hand it off. I thought that was interesting because I always thought, even when Brady was in New England with Josh McDaniels, an RPO, that's an easy, it's just an easy addition to the offense, right? You steal, it's about 80% completions on it. Big Ben's the only quarterback I think I've ever seen who's not good at RPOs or comfortable doing that, really. But Brady's never run one in his life, as far as the true, put it in the belly of a running back and then pull it and read a player. They have called running plays where he'll throw it, which, is not exactly the same thing. But I just thought that was interesting that Brady's so confident and comfortable with, I know what they're going to do pre-snap. Why do I need to read it post-snap? That they don't even run those types of plays. And again, you can kind of see that in this game where he's just getting rid of the ball quickly. A couple times early in the game, Tyler Johnson, not exactly on the same page with him. Those are the types of things, though, that can come back to bite, because that's the Chris Godwin role that Tyler Johnson was playing in the slot, where that quick hitting pass offense, kind of runs through that spot.
Yeah, Tyler Johnson and him, let's say they were on different pages which is a theme with Tyler Johnson. I'm not saying it's always his fault, but I am saying he consistently seems to be on different pages to everybody else. That happened a couple of times early in the game. Brashad Perriman had a drop, and then I don't think those guys were targeted in the second half, like either of them. So it is a potential problem. Like Mike Evans was the workhorse in this game, and Evans for kind of every now and again you see Evans and you think he looks way more sprightly and quick and like short area, has more sort of short area ability than you give him credit for. And you're kind of like, why does that not always look the case? You know, you see these games where you're like, he's this sort of big linear receiver that can't really change directions. Then you see a game like this where like he catches a ball, makes a dude miss in a phone booth and starts scampering down the sideline. You're like, where is that guy most of the time?
It's kind of like Gronk, right? I mean, there's plays where Gronk looks a little bit slower, and then other times it's like, oh, there's 2014 Gronk where he could just make people miss and make them look stupid.
Well, like Evans had a big game, Gronk had a pretty good game, and then outside of that, there really wasn't an awful lot. And these are the receivers that we're talking about that you need. Somebody needs to become the Antonio Brown or the Chris Godwin, the extra option that makes you impossible to defend. Because we've seen teams take away Mike Evans in a game. We've seen teams take away Gronk. And the Eagles weren't able to do it, but if you run up against a better team in these playoffs and they take away Evans and Gronk, what's up? What's next? Like, because you literally went away from the two other options in this game because you couldn't trust them to make catches or be in the right place. So that is a potential issue down the line for the Bucs. But look, it's not really relevant in this game. That the offensive game plan that they had of just like, let's Brady carve up this defense. The Eagles didn't change anything up, and so they were destined to give up a ton of points on that side of the ball. Then it became like, all right, what's it going to look like on the other side? What is this Eagles offense going to be? And not only did Tampa Bay dominate in the run game generally, but they also like completely sold out to do it. Like Jordan Whitehead just lived in the box. His average depth of tackle was like 2 yards as a safety.
Right.
They went, not only are we going to win against the run individually, one-on-one, but we're also going to overcommit and stuff the line of bodies and say, you are not running the ball. And the Eagles, they had literally no answer to anything that they were doing. Like they tried to pass the ball with quick screens and stuff. They're like, well, that's not going to work because the whole point is they're stacking the line of scrimmage with bodies. Like there's no space for your quick screens. There are too many people. If you are going to do anything against this defense, it's going to have to be with a shot over the top. And they didn't trust Hurts to make them, or Hurts didn't trust himself to make them. But either way, there was almost zero threat of like a punishing deep pass that was going to scare this defense off.
Yeah, I think the Bucs they made key stops at the right time too, right? I mean, they get Shaq Barrett back. They get, as you mentioned, Jordan Whitehead just being in and around the line of scrimmage. That's why, like, we talk about run defense too, kind of being a choice. You know, the Bucs had not been great against the run in recent weeks, but just getting some personnel back, plus making the choice. Okay, Jalen Hurts, beat us over the top, beat us with one-on-ones, and even Aikman was pointing out. And sometimes it's funny because I feel like Troy makes the game sound so simple from the booth when he's played the game. He knows it's not. It's like, well, the corners are 10 yards off. Just run a curl. It's not always that simple, right? They're sitting on underneath stuff and everything. But he was basically making the point. The Bucs are inviting you to feed Devontae Smith, to feed your outside receivers, and they weren't. You know, the Eagles weren't. And even when they ran the 12-yard curl, Jalen Hurts was off. I mean, Jalen Hurts did not have a good game. He put the ball in harm's way a bunch, couldn't connect on key third and fourth downs, but it was one of those games where I feel like Jalen Hurts would like make this impressive play, like, oh, Jalen Hurts, all right, it's pretty good. That's impressive. We've seen some of that this year. And then he'd come back with just a terrible play. It really was a roller coaster for Hurts, one of his worst games ultimately of the entire season. But I think that was the difference, right? The Eagles got taken out of their game plan with their run game. I thought they'd do a little better job there, have more success. And when they did that, there was just too much on Jalen Hurts' shoulders. And I think it'll be interesting to see if the Eagles overreact to this, right? If they say, do you go from encouraging first full year as a starter from Jalen Hurts to here we are in a playoff game, and we never felt like we had a chance. This guy never gave us a chance to win, even though at a high level, you should say we barely made the playoffs. We're pretty much a rebuilding team that just snuck in at the 7 seed. We shouldn't overreact to this. Jalen Hurts is, he's pretty good. Let's add 3 first-round picks to the roster and see what he can do.
Yeah, the Hurts question becomes very interesting after this game, because this was a game where he looked like a quarterback with a ceiling that wasn't particularly high. And if you were on the fence, or if you weren't quite sure what Jalen Hurts was going to be going forward, this was a game that would be very damaging to your outlook of what he can be. Now, it's a one game, right? And we've seen, Lamar Jackson had a game, right, at the end of his first encouraging season where the Chargers showed up with a good defensive game plan. Lamar could do almost nothing. And that, if you were taking just that game, you're like, this guy's done. Like, he can't pass the ball. He can't survive as just a running quarterback. You're going to need to develop some kind of passing skill when teams know that's how to stop you, and they're going to force you to pass the ball. And if you don't have that, you're done. And then the next season, Lamar was a unanimous MVP, right?
Right.
I'm not saying that's going to happen to Jalen Hurts, because I don't think he has that ceiling. But a huge part of that is that I've never thought he has that kind of ceiling. So if you're coming out of this game, whatever your opinion of Hurts, this didn't help it. He didn't have answers when he needed to pass. And when you took away that rushing threat that the Eagles have thrived on. And the other thing about that is, if you kind of look at the breakdown of the Eagles playing good teams versus the Eagles playing bad teams, they beat the bad teams and they lose to the good teams. This is kind of like Miami's season. Like, when you look at their winning streak to get themselves back into playoff contention, it was just a who's who of terrible teams or terrible quarterbacks. That's kind of what the Eagles did this season as well, only it was slightly differently arranged, so it was a little bit harder to see. But like, this is the big question now for Philadelphia. You're going into this offseason with 3 first-round picks, without an obvious, clear 100% answer at quarterback. What do? Do you build around the guy that just had a really discouraging game against a proper playoff team? Or is that enough for you to bail on the idea and start throwing your hat in the ring of the Deshaun Watson, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson kind of sweepstakes and get yourself a quote unquote real quarterback that does have that top 5 ceiling that can take you somewhere else?
We'll get into it plenty this offseason. I think the interesting thing about Jalen Hurts, you're coming off of you hurt Carson Wentz's feelings, right? And you and I disagree on whether that matters or not. Carson Wentz probably felt wanted by the Colts. He probably felt like, all right, these guys want me. They're bringing me. It didn't matter. He had the same performance, right? Ultimately, didn't matter. Jalen Hurts is a guy he's been passed over before. He's been benched for Tua at Alabama. He transferred and had success. I honestly wonder if Jalen Hurts, who teammates seem to love and has just won everywhere he's been, for whatever you want to call that, right? I do wonder if Jalen Hurts has the personality that can kind of like handle it, right? We're going to draft Malik Willis in the first round. We're going to draft whoever, and he can just handle it, and he rises to the occasion and beats out the first round picks and keeps him on the bench for 2 years. I do wonder how the Eagles do this, because in a non-human world where it's just like, we have 3 first round picks and we have right now a mid-tier quarterback who could be lower tier, really, then yeah, you should be using your first round picks on a quarterback. On the other hand, 2 years of rookie contracts, Jalen Hurts is kind of intriguing, but can you leverage that and also have another quarterback ready to go on a rookie contract in 2 years? There is some fascinating team building discussions, I think, to be had here with the Eagles. I would also say, to your point, right, they didn't beat any good teams. I think it'd be dangerous if the Eagles forgot that they were rebuilding from this depleted Super Bowl roster from 2017. They're still on the way up as a roster. They're not like a playoff team that's a couple players away and close. They're still rebuilding, and I think they can't lose sight of that just because they snuck in as the 7 seed.
And it's also important it shouldn't all be on Jalen Hurts, right? Like,
of course,
he didn't do anything in this game that would encourage you for his future. On the other hand, he was let down by a team that was, they were outcoached as well. Like, Tampa Bay had a game plan to beat Philadelphia's defense. They had a game plan on defense to beat Philadelphia's offense, and the Eagles had no adjustments. They had no answer to what Tampa Bay was throwing at them. Like the Bucs were doing a bunch of pretty reasonably obvious but clever things. They were stacking the line of scrimmage. They were making that conscious choice to defend the run better than they normally would. They were, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka hasn't had a ton of success this year. The incredibly athletic first-round pick that was sort of seen as this smart pickup because maybe not this year, but next year he'll be good once he's kind of learned what he's doing. They've actually leaned on him quite a bit down the stretch when Shaq Barrett and JPP have been out, and he's played a ton and hasn't gotten any pressure whatsoever, essentially. But he's like, his athleticism is visible on every snap. So the Bucs were like using him to spy Jalen Hurts. They were like, you're not going to get pressure anyway, so let's hang around back here and just keep an eye on that quarterback. And if he takes off somewhere, go after him. Yeah. So they were doing that. It's the most I've ever seen Tampa Bay's defensive front rotate. Like everybody played 20 to 30 snaps. They had 8 or 9 guys that had just a bunch of snaps and just cycle through them all, as opposed to usually
they had a 3 and out. They had a 3 and out, and then the first drive, and then the second drive, the second team defensive line. Right. I mean, they were keeping everybody fresh.
Usually the Bucs are like Shaq Barrett and JPP are playing every snap, and if you get in for a few snaps in the game, count yourself lucky. In this game, everybody was rotating. They were keeping everyone fresh. Like this was a specific design game plan for this game, in contrast to Philadelphia, who basically rolled out there and went, well, this is how we got here. Let's use this again. And it's just, one thing about the playoffs is that changes, right? The thing that got you there isn't necessarily the thing that's going to work in this game, because the good team that you're now playing is prepared for that. And if you don't have answers, all you're doing is feeding them exactly what they want to see.
You also have Jalen Reagor muffing a punt after a big defensive stop by the Eagles. I mean, there is
not just muffing. I think 3 consecutive, but certainly 3 total punts he made an absolute hames of. The first one he let bounce over his head or something, and that ended up with like 15 more yards of field position. Then he muffs one. Then did he almost muff another one, or just was an absolute? It's like, I feel kind of sorry for Jalen Reagor at this point. Like the dude is forever connected with Justin Jefferson because that's the decision that the Eagles made, right? The sort of either or choice. They took Reagor. Jefferson ends up as an absolute superstar. Now, not only is Jalen Reagor like not an impact wide receiver, he's not doing anything with the gimmick plays that they're trying to give him because the whole offense is sunk. They're using him as a punt returner, presumably just to try and get some kind of value out of him. And either he's not good at that, or he just had like the worst game of his punt returning life in the playoffs on national television. It's like, God, just stop the misery. It's sad at this stage.
Yeah, so Eagles will be a hot topic this offseason. Bucs move on. They're going to play the winner of the Rams-Cardinals, so we'll be watching that tonight. We'll find out. They'll be playing Sunday afternoon. To your point, just to wrap it up, Bucs, I think, do need to figure out what happens if I think the Rams might be equipped to take away Evans and Gronk, or at least put a lot of focus there. So we'll see if that third option steps up. The one other thing to add, by the way, Giovanni Bernard and Keyshawn Vaughn were the 2 running backs for the Bucs. Leonard Fournette did not make it back from IR. Bernard coming back as a pass game weapon, though, could be an interesting development for the Bucs here down the stretch, especially if Fournette isn't full strength, if we don't get playoff Lenny to come back yet. The other thing that is notable for you, Sam, Boston Scott with 1 carry for a 34-yard touchdown. Feels like the Eagles underused your favorite player, Boston Scott. You got to give him the ball a little bit more.
I mean, look, I'm not a big stat guy all the time, but a 34-yard average per carry feels like reason to give him the ball more.
All right, Dallas Cowboys, San Francisco 49ers. 49ers win 23-17. They're moving on to the divisional round. We already discussed the Dallas Cowboys a little bit on the PFF NFL Daily. It seems like sky's falling in Dallas. Jerry Jones is not happy. He thinks they've got the most talented team and they're underachieving. I think that's a pretty common theme in Dallas. I also don't know if Jerry Jones is wrong. Talented team that at various points in this season, we've said This offense is as good as it gets. This defense is as good as it gets. They're dangerous. Micah Parsons just emerged as a defensive player of the year candidate as a rookie. Trevon Diggs has 11 picks. They're getting healthy at the right time. Dan Quinn's pushing all the right buttons. All this stuff's happening, but it's all over for the Dallas Cowboys. And the Niners pull the upset. I think we both took this, right? We both felt like the trending 49ers were the right play here, and turns out to be the case. Of course, they get up 23-7 and almost let Dallas back into it. Jimmy G with a late miss and pick that came back to bite. Lots to unpack here in this game.
Yeah, I think the Niners were like everybody's favorite underdog this week. Like they were the sort of, sometimes this happens where there's like one underdog and everybody thinks that underdog is actually the team that's going to win. Kind of like, sometimes in the draft, there's like one player that everybody's convinced that gets drafted in the third round is going to be a star, and that guy pans out. This was the deal. Like the 49ers offense with all those unique playmakers, and in particular with Deebo Samuel, they just took it to Dallas. And this Cowboys offense that was so potent earlier in the season, it's basically not been itself since Dak Prescott got injured. And okay, they've shown up for a couple of games, but one of them was against Philadelphia's backups. Like, and remember, we were saying the Cowboys essentially, it was like they just felt that game was important just to get back to like, oh, look, we can score at will. We're a really good offense. Like, remember that when you play a good team. Like, it doesn't matter that it's against the Eagles backups. Simply remembering the feeling that you're able to drop back, fire the ball, all these great receivers and rack up 50 points. Like, remember, you're capable of doing that. What is this funk you're in right now? They obviously felt there was value to that. Now, turns out there wasn't, because immediately you face a good team again, the whole thing disappears. But this Cowboys offense just never got itself back in sync. And because of that, they couldn't do enough against the 49ers, who desperately tried to throw that game away at the end. It was a relatively uninteresting game in terms of like the 49ers just have this in control. They're dominating everywhere. Dallas has no answer for Deebo Samuel. The 49ers defense, their pass rush is destroying Dallas's offensive line, which I think on balance was the best offensive line in the NFL over the season. They were doing it without Nick Bosa for most of the game because he gets concussed. They're just winning. Like, this is just a beatdown. And then all of a sudden, late in the game, Jimmy G was like, wait a minute. Wait just a second. Like, this isn't over yet. I'm gonna make sure you get your money's worth, and we're gonna have an exciting finish. And Jimmy G, like, for the last 5 minutes, almost single-handedly took it upon himself to make sure Dallas had a chance at tying this up.
Yeah, I want to talk high level about this game and then get into some of like the nuts and bolts. Let's hurry up with our punt team and just, the ref tackling Dak with no time left. I mean, there's a lot of very specific plays that happened at the end of this game that were crazy. But high level, our analysis of the 49ers in this offense, the fact that they are attacking the field with just an incredible group of playmakers. Deebo Samuel impresses every time he's out there, whether he's coming out of the backfield or whether he's catching the ball. Once again, awesome performance as a runner out of the backfield. Brandon Ayuk becomes, remember early in the season, he couldn't even get on the field. He was in a slump. He was
in the doghouse.
Yeah, there was something off on Brandon Ayuk. And even when they drafted Ayuk in the first round, if you're Kyle Shanahan and you're like, they said Ayuk was their number 2 receiver that year. And for us, he was probably 5 or 6, right? There was a lot of good receivers potentially that season he got drafted. But man, does he fit the 49ers, right? He's just explosive and long, and it's like, all right, go cover that guy. And George Kittle didn't even get involved much until maybe, a pass in the very end, right? It is just so tough to stop this 49ers team with everything they're bringing to the table, unique run concepts as well. And it really is on Jimmy G to just not screw it up. And he was good early, man. He was making some tight window throws early in the game. He was doing some nice stuff early, but it does feel like, again, we nailed it, right? It's like there's going to be 2 or 3 turnover-worthy plays here. You either hope that they get dropped or that they just don't happen somehow. And they did. And the back-to-back plays were missing Brandon Ayuk on an open called the blaze out, like a little post out route. Jimmy G overthrows him. Next play, I believe it was, right? He overthrows for an interception. When Dallas was done, I was like, honey, the Niners are about to beat oh no, he just threw a pick. Like as I was telling my wife, she comes downstairs. The Niners are about to pull the upset. Oh no, Jimmy G did it again.
Yeah, that plays out, by the way. Brandon Ayuk was barbecuing Trayvon Diggs throughout the game. That was one of those plays where, like, Diggs is a gambling cornerback. That dude will drive on what he thinks is happening in this game, and if you can show him something and then hit him with something else, he will lose by 5 yards of separation because he's so intent on driving on that first move. The blaze out, he was absolutely put in a blender and was nowhere near Ayuk once he made that break. There was another one earlier in the game as well, which, to be fair, I think is probably an impossible cover for a corner. Kind of drag route over the middle, and he's like absolutely sprinting to undercut that. And if Jimmy G throws that drag, there's a pretty good chance he's undercutting that, picking it off, and it's going back for 6. But that doesn't happen because Ayuk, I don't know if he read it or if he understood like this was called the whole way, but Ayuk suddenly turns upfield from that drag, and Diggs just flies past him. Like it's like the Top Gun thing, right? You know, sometimes you just tap on the brakes and they go flying right by. That's what he did, and Diggs was gone. And like that game was the reason that Diggs doesn't have a great grade at PFF despite the 11 interceptions, because yeah, he gambles, but sometimes those gambles don't pay off, and when they don't, you've just given up 5 yards of separation to an explosive receiver, at which point anything can happen. You know, it can be a 15-yard gain, or it can go to the house for 80 yards and a touchdown. So Ayuk was great. Diggs was toasted. But yeah, like this 49ers offense is phenomenal and incredibly productive and is so hard to stop, but you're going to have to weather Jimmy G taking a shotgun to his feet twice a game. And if you can't do that, like that's the difference. And those are, in this game, they got away with it, right? Jimmy G tossed the ball to the defense. He also, he literally gave Dallas a chance to tie this game at the end. They were going to QB sneak on 4th and inches. And Jimmy G snaps the ball before Trent Williams gets set. So the penalty gets called on Trent Williams for false start. But actually what the penalty is your quarterback didn't give your left tackle a half beat to set after he's gone in motion, and therefore they're calling something. I think they called it false start. Shouldn't that technically be illegal shift or something?
They called it false start. It was definitely illegal motion, illegal shift, whatever you want to call it. And that's absolutely
on the quarterback.
It's absolutely on the quarterback. It is absolutely on the quarterback.
And that genuinely, it's not. It doesn't go down as a turnover-worthy play or anything, right? But that's the difference between game over and Dallas has a chance on that drive, which was going pretty well until, they decided to run a draw. But that play that's not going to show up anywhere in passing statistics or, general mistakes in the game. But Jimmy G in that game made a mistake as catastrophic as throwing the ball to the defense.
Yeah, I mean, there was so much to unpack at the end of that game. So the reason why you got to that QB sneak situation, the Niners had 3rd and, I think, long. Run the end around to Deebo Samuel. He is, an index card away, Gene Steratore, an index card away from the first down. It's 4th and inches. The Niners make the right call to go for it because it was 3rd and 10, and they get 9 3/4.
Yeah.
Right? It was...
Well, they get 10, and then they look at it and give them 9 3/4.
As they reviewed it, right? That was... Roma, I did turn back from the Nickelodeon broadcast. Roma was like, he definitely got it. I think he's got... And then somehow he got, by the end of it, he was like, oh, yeah, this is definitely short. I agree. This is short. Somehow somebody changed his mind. But it was short. Niners make the right call. They could have punted it, given it back to Dallas with about 30 seconds left, presumably inside the 20, or just, fall forward with the QB sneak and the game's over.
Yeah.
They fell forward for the QB sneak. The game should have been over, but what they call the false start, it's the illegal motion, and it really is just Jimmy G not waiting for Trent Williams to get set because he's in motion. You just look over there, wait for him to be set. He's got to be set for a second, and then you run the sneak and just fall forward.
Yeah. As I say, that's as bad a mistake as any interception, any fumble. That could have been a game-defining mistake. You went from literally the game's over. If you don't screw that up and you just take the sneak and get it, the game's done. You win. You absolutely win the game. Instead, you have to punt. Well, you don't have to. You could have gone for it in 4th and 5, but that would have been hella risky. Instead, you punt the ball back to Dallas, and you are at the mercy of your defense holding up for 32 seconds. Like, those are the plays that Jimmy G is making that are like, this game should have been a comfortable win for San Francisco. And literally Jimmy Garoppolo on his own decided to make that not the case.
After playing pretty well early in the game, I thought he did a nice job early, but disastrous late. The other stuff that was just insane.
Talk about the fake punt thing. I guess I still don't.
So this was on the back of two things, though, right? They were down 13 at this point. They were down 16, Dallas, and kicked a field goal to make it down 13. That made the analytics folks got very upset.
Very upset.
It was. Some people did. A lot of people thought it was more of a toss-up, right? Because when you're chasing 16, it is very difficult to score twice and get to 2-point conversions. Sometimes getting the field goal in just playing the possession game, even though it's challenging, it's still a 2-score game, might not be the wrong play. So they kick a field goal. Now they're down 13. It's 4th and 5. Dallas lines up for the punt. Oh my gosh, what are they doing? You got to go for it. Well, they run a fake and they convert it. Great, good job, Dallas. You run the fake punt. You convert this 4th and 5. You needed it. You're down 13. Then they run hurry up with the punt team. The punt team stayed on the field. And they got to the line of scrimmage. And here's what happens. They didn't know what to do. I think they thought the Niners were just going to be so out of sorts that they would waste a timeout.
No. So here's what happened, right? So apparently the idea is, and apparently, so Romo was kind of got halfway there by saying that what the plan is they had, I think they called it a turbo call or something, where you get the fake, you get the first down, and then you run hurry up with your punt team. You have a quick play call, presumably like a direct snap to somebody. But the idea is, like, in you doing this, the defense is basically so panicked that they call a timeout, right?
Right.
For whatever gain that is. What happened is that somebody like ran on the field to celebrate the converted 4th down, and the officials deemed that enough to hold the ball so that San Francisco could substitute to match. So the hurry up thing got invalidated by the fact that some asshole ran on the field to celebrate, and they had to stop them running a play so that the 49ers had a chance to substitute and match themselves. So now, like, at whatever gain you were running with your punt, so now the punt team is just standing there as the offense being like, what, do we still run the play? What happens now? And then they eventually decided, that once the element of surprise is taken away, this is literally just running offense with our punt team, which is probably stupid. So let's run the offense out there. And then you didn't have enough time, delay
with
a game,
about 15. Yeah, with about 15 seconds on the play clock, they run the offense back out there.
Yeah.
And when you do that, the refs have to stop the game. The play clock continues. They stop the game and let the defense substitute. So that's why somewhere there's some Dallas Cowboys fan today showing probably like 2 screenshots, right? There's one where the ref is like sitting over the ball, stopping Dallas from snapping it as the play clock goes 3, 2, 1, which is technically the right play. I don't know if the play clock is supposed to stop at that point or if it's supposed to keep running, but the ref is not allowing them to snap the ball as they're just about to take a delay game because they have to let the Niners substitute. And of course, then the last play of the game, again, there's probably some screenshot about how the refs are like anti-Dallas, where the referee's like running into Dak Prescott as they're trying to set the ball. The punt thing, as I mentioned it on the daily, that reminds me of like, you just drew this up, like, oh, like this looks really great on paper, not realizing all of the execution that goes into it and how difficult it is maybe to pull it off just to steal a timeout from the opposing defense. That's the first thing. The last play of the game, however, this was Dallas. They're down 6. They get the ball back. So after Jimmy G,
just set up this drive, right? Dallas gets the ball, 1st and 10 from the Dallas 20, 32 seconds left. They need a touchdown, right? So you got to go 80 yards in 32 seconds for a touchdown to have any shot at this game. Obviously, the 49ers are playing super soft defense. So Dallas is like picking up chunks, right? First play, Cedric Wilson for 9 yards. They lateral it, right? They run a literal hook and ladder, pick up whatever that is, 20 yards. Now it's 1st and 10 from the 40. So you get another pass, Tony Pollard, you get 10 more yards. Now you're at the 50. You've only chewed up whatever that is, 8, 12, 14 seconds. Dak Prescott passes to Dalton Schultz, another 9 yards, timeout. Now you're 2nd and 1 from San Francisco's 41. So you've actually taken a pretty good chunk of time, or a pretty good chunk out of the yardage you need. You've now got 41 yards to go for your touchdown, and you got 14 seconds left on the clock. So most people are thinking, you've probably got 2 shots at the end zone, or you try and get one more of these chunk plays and get yourself 30 yards to go for the end zone shot to end the game.
Yes.
Instead, Dallas does.
With 14 seconds left, right?
Yeah.
QB draw.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Which, I can see the discussions. I could see the discussions, right? Because the Niners, everything you described on that drive, the Niners were not taking away the sideline, right? What you want is Dallas to make one big throw over the middle of the field and take all the clock. But the Niners were actually letting them take the sideline. They finally decided to take away the sideline, so the middle of the field was wide open. So I could see this being you're in practice, you're like, hey, in this situation, they're going to take away the sidelines, the middle of the field's going to be open, we're going to run the draw, we're going to run up, we're going to spike it, and we're going to take one more shot at the end zone. A couple of the problems that arise there, I've seen multiple people say that's this is how close this is. It's a 17-second play, right? To do that. It takes 17 seconds or so to generally run a play, get set, and spike it. The other part, Scott Pioli, I don't know if you saw his tweet, former New England executive, where, again, say what you want about Bill Belichick, and, they got smoked the other day, but his attention to detail is obviously incredible. He's the best coach of all time. He said, when you practice this thing, so Dak slides, Tyler Biadasz, the center, just grabs the ball and decides he's going to get ready to snap it. That's illegal. The player can't set the ball. The referee has to set the ball. So when you practice these situations, you have to bake in the time for someone on your team to hand the ball to the ref, the Larry Fitzgerald, the thing Larry Fitzgerald does better than anybody in the NFL, right? That is, Larry Fitzgerald was not good for the last 5 years of his career, but boy, could he get the ball to the ref. That's all I'll say. So somebody has to hand the ball to the ref, right? So say what you want about Dak's about to snap it and all this stuff, and the ref kind of runs into him because the ref had to set the ball. So Biadasz should have turned and just had the ball ready for the ref to take from him, and Dak should have been ready for a ref to be running by to set it. Here's the other crazy thing, right? They snapped the ball with 1 second left. The last play counted. The spike counted. It was a play that counted. So he once you realize, and this is all happening so fast, once you realize we don't have time to spike it, he needs to pass that ball because they snapped it with 1 second left. It's going to take a second to spike it. That's what happened. The last play of the game was a spike. They got the snap off, and Dak dirted it, and that was the last play of the game. They still had a chance for him to drop back and maybe chuck it up with that 1 second left.
There's no way of knowing that, though. You are just desperately hoping that you get that snap done, and that there's still one on the clock when you get it done. I think expecting anybody to realize that we can get this off, but we've lost the time to spike it and still have a second left. Let's quickly adjust to a deep shot in the end zone is just unrealistic. What essentially you're saying is that they were 1 second away from having executed this, and the 1 second is the difference between somebody doing Larry Fitzgerald or not, right? It looked ridiculous because they're lining up to try and snap this thing, and a ref comes in, runs Dak the hell over, blasts him into his center. Dak almost flies through the offensive line into the neutral zone, has to get himself back, and then they snap the ball. But the only reason that happened is because nobody handed the ball to the official. So this dude is running through. So when you see it, again, it looks stupid because all he does is plow his way through Dak, force his way through the A-gap, pick up the ball, put it back down again, half a foot behind, and then get the hell out of there. So it's why did you run over the entire Dallas team just to do that thing? And it's because nobody gave him the damn ball. What Dak or Biadasz should have done is grabbed the ball, immediately found that dude and stuffed it in his gut, and then just quickly lined up. Yeah, exactly like Fitzgerald did. And if they'd done that, that's the difference between that second or not. So Dak seemed pretty pissed off at the official. It looked ridiculous, but that's his fault. Like when you run that draw up the middle, I think the call is bad because I think this is inevitable, right? You don't have margin for error. As you said, it's a 17-second play that you need to get done in 14 seconds. So it needs to go absolutely perfectly for you to have any shot at pulling that off. And the chances are that's not going to happen because this is football and stuff rarely goes perfectly. So you're probably way better off either taking 2 shots into the end zone or finding some other way of picking up a short chunk of yardage and taking 1 shot in the end zone. I just don't think you have the time to screw around with this kind of play, even though I acknowledge, like, yeah, there's plenty of space up the middle because they're giving you that. Like they're literally inviting you to do the thing that you just did. They're like, yeah, absolutely. Take 10 yards up the middle because I don't think you can get the ball snapped in 14 seconds. So I think the play call was bad, but if you're going to do that as Dak Prescott, you have to be 100% aware of exactly what needs to happen from the moment you slide, which is get your ass up, immediately find that official, run the ball over and hand it into his gut, and then line the hell up and get it snapped. Like the fact that you didn't do that, it's 100% on you.
Yeah, people are trying to figure out who to blame, right? Is it Kellen Moore? Is it Mike McCarthy? Is it Dak Prescott? I mean, they all knew what was coming, right? Supposedly Kellen Moore makes the call, Mike McCarthy says okay, and Dak runs it, right? So poor play call, poor execution as well. Dak was essentially, I was surprised, post-game press conference, Dallas fans were throwing a lot of stuff on the field. Dak basically lamenting that they were throwing stuff at Cowboys players when the media suggested, well, they were throwing stuff at the refs too, and Dak was like, oh, good on them, basically. Paraphrasing. But, man, I was a little surprised by Dak saying that. Man, he didn't play well in this game. He didn't play well at all. I mean, he didn't play well at all down the stretch outside of the 2 games where they destroyed Washington and Philadelphia. I think Dak, for the money that he's making, deserves some of the blame here as well with this offense and everything that's happening here. And I think that's why Jerry Jones is frustrated. Like, I've put this team around. I've put this team together. We have a high-end quarterback, maybe the best playmakers in the NFL, PFF's best offensive line in the NFL, even though they didn't always play like it yesterday. Incredible defensive playmakers. What's happening here? Just a mess.
It would have been hilarious if they then made him go get slimed for the Nickelodeon MVP.
All my kids wanted to see some slime. I mean, I don't know where Nickelodeon, because they said they were going to slime people, and all of a sudden some Nickelodeon show was on.
I assume it was because, like, Dak Prescott won the thing, and you can't, like, after that be like, hey, Dak, can you go over to this dunk tank for a moment? We're going to dump 600 pounds of slime in your head.
Was it always going to be the losers getting the slime? I always assumed, like, the winners would get it, just because who the heck wants to do that as a loser?
I think it's just like it's a vote for the MVP, and like that for the second year in a row, it was the losing quarterback, right?
I don't know. I wasn't keeping tabs on the MVP.
So somebody was telling me that apparently Big Cat from PMT like rigged the vote, like running a campaign to try and get Dak, because when they announced the sort of winner, it was like, oh, Dak Prescott with 1 million votes. And apparently that was Big Cat, like, rigging the system. So Dak,
I told you that was. I've told the story on the podcast before. That was when my roommate won the T-shirts by 1 million votes.
Can you imagine if after that, like, Dak's seething, the dude saying, they're absolutely right to be throwing things at the officials. If some guy, like the little 12-year-old or whatever on the sideline that was Nickelodeon saying, like, hey, Dak, can we just get you over here? There's 600 pounds of green crap to throw in your head after this. Don't worry, it's for the kids. That would have been pretty funny.
The other stuff that happened down the stretch, that was crazy. I believe it was a 3rd and long. Neville Gallimore picks up an illegal hands to the face to negate a 3rd down stop from the Cowboys. I don't think the refs, so the Dallas ended up with 14 penalties for 85 yards. And I don't think the refs made bad calls. I don't think this was
fair.
Yeah, I don't think this was this reminded me of the Cowboys Raiders game on Thanksgiving, where it was flag after flag after flag, but there weren't many calls. There was maybe like 1 call in there I think we may have complained about, but it was more me complaining about underthrown pass interference. I think the calls were right. The other fascinating one was, as the Niners were running out the clock, there were 2 defensive holding calls on running plays. These are rare. Now, why would you want to hold on defense? Because linemen are trying to go get linebackers. Defensive linemen are trying to hold up offensive linemen. I think one was a legit hold. The other one, did you see the DeMarcus Lawrence one? Was a Kittle coming around, one of the tight ends coming around, and DeMarcus Lawrence just like wraps him up.
It was Gregory, wasn't it?
It was what?
I think wasn't it Gregory that did that?
Oh, it was Gregory. Yeah, sorry. But he just wraps up the blocker, essentially. It looked like he thought the guy had the ball. Yeah. It was like the Niners are so good at their deception. Randy Gregory's tackling the wrong player, but it's a defensive hold. You can't hold the blocker. So, again, it was the right call. It was one of the weirdest plays. You just don't see that. I mean, there was a season's worth of just crazy in about 5 minutes of this Niners-Cowboys game.
It was like the finish to this game was just absolute madness. You're right. It's like the last 5 minutes of game time was just absolute craziness from start to finish. Absurdity. Both teams trying to give it away. It felt like neither team wanted to win this game. Like they were both figuring out ways of losing it after the other team had figured out a way to lose it and give them an opportunity. It was bizarre. And honestly, those are the kinds of things where you're looking at this as Jerry Jones, the owner, and are like, are we on the right direction? I think we have a Super Bowl caliber talent in terms of roster. Where are we falling short? And you're like, well, penalties are usually a coaching thing, or at least they get attributed to the coach, right? A discipline thing. That's coaching. Calling a draw play with 14 seconds left. That's coaching thing. Now, the question is, which coach? Because this is the debate is we have Kellen Moore, who we think is this great young offense coordinator, and we don't want to let him go to be a head coach somewhere else. And we have Mike McCarthy, who's like a punching bag for everybody and gets the blame for everything. Well, you can't. One of those guys is making the play call, right? You can't blame both of them or one or like which guy made the call. If it was Kellen Moore, you can't blame Mike McCarthy for it. I liked Ross Tucker's tweet where he was suggesting that Kellen Moore called the draw, like to make a power move on the job. I'm going to call this draw. Mike McCarthy gets fired, and I just step into the job.
The Kellen Moore thing is interesting because I was excited.
By the way, to be clear, I like that as a joke, not as
a joke, right?
I think happened.
Kellen Moore, who looks like your middle school next door neighbor, 14-year-old. Also, Kellen Moore, who, man, I wish I saw him play 10 years in the NFL. I just wanted to see a guy with that level of arm talent just try to compete because it is probably the worst arm to enter the NFL in history.
He tried.
He has a 400-yard game in the NFL. Just saying, Kellen Moore is a baller. I don't know if he's a special offensive coordinator, though. Like, I don't know if he's the clear next guy. I have not a clue if he can lead the team as a head coach. Who knows? So that's what's interesting, right? I mean, Dak's improvement as a quarterback and his improvement statistically has coincided with Dallas surrounding him with incredible playmakers. And I don't know if they improved their offensive coordinator because Kellen Moore is special or because Scott Linehan in the old system was just trash, right? I mean, so trying to decouple all those things is a challenge. Like, what has made Dallas become this much better? But now the question is, okay, now what's missing? Why can't they get over this hump here?
And we know that, like, even throughout his career, Dak Prescott has been one of the most susceptible quarterbacks to the changes in talent around him, right? Like, his career has basically been a direct tie to how good his supporting cast is. And when Amari Cooper showed up, immediate jump up in Dak Prescott production. CeeDee Lamb rolls up, like immediate. Like, you can literally tie his entire career progression either way to what the talent around him looks like, both in terms of receiving talent and offensive line quality. So I think it's a real point that, do we know the coaches in Dallas are good or bad? Because this guy goes as the supporting cast goes.
Yeah, as I said on the daily, I'm kind of somewhat in agreement with Jerry Jones. I think the Joneses, the GMs, the decision makers, the team builders have done a really good job. Now, part of team building is not just finding talent, but finding talent that meshes together. But you could say that falls on the coach. So should be interesting in Dallas here. We got to give the Niners credit too. Nick Bosa injured with a concussion. Fred Warner missing the end of the game. This Niners defense just balling out, man. D'Amico Ryan's calling the plays over there. I think they deserve a ton of credit for what they've done defensively because they've stitched it together at corner, and obviously they were on the defensive line and at linebacker yesterday as well, but still come out on top. I think they have a chance to pull the upset in Lambeau. I think it's going to be a lot more difficult, though, because Jimmy G putting the ball in harm's way and not being able to close this game out. And that's the other part about this whole thing. Kyle Shanahan, they've got a 2-score lead, and they still can't close it out. Why? Is it because they're missing passes? Is it because they run too much? Do they not run enough? What's the problem with Shanahan closing games out? They officially get it done today, but boy, did they make it a lot closer than it could have been.
The 49ers pass rush has been so impressive. 12 different players had a pressure in this game. 9 different players had multiple pressures in this game. And they were getting it done late in the game without Nick Bosa. Like, they have been able to get production. Like, Arden Key has become a really important pass rusher for them, who kind of washed out as this guy who was undersized and couldn't really get pressure at this level because he just didn't have the bulk to win by any means other than speed around the edge. They have been able to get legit pressure against, again, a really good offensive line. Okay, they didn't play that way in this game, but that was because they were getting wrecked by these 49ers defensive pass rushers. That 49ers pass rush is really important for them and is one of the reasons that they're like so much better than that. Did you see Renner's tweet about Deebo Samuel's rushing?
No.
So Renner tweeted that if you took Deebo's rushing efficiency numbers and extrapolated it out to Jonathan Taylor's workload over a season, Deebo would have 2,100 rushing yards, 43 touchdowns, and 111 broken tackles.
Wow. Incredible.
Now, obviously, you can't do that. Things change.
No, you can't,
depending on the run.
But it's great for perspective, though. Yeah. It's like when you're watching Deebo carry 6 to 8 times a game, what are you seeing? You're seeing a guy that is this effective, right? Because it feels that way. It does feel like the guy just doesn't get stopped. Dallas made a couple nice plays to bottle him up, but Deebo's a defense breaker. Again, that's what it is. That the Niners know how to break defenses with unique playmakers. So that's the offense in a nutshell, and they do a great job of it.
I mean, he's the guy we've been talking about for a while now. If you put a wide receiver in the backfield, it screws up a defense. They can't handle that if a guy can actually carry the ball. And not only is Deebo good at doing that, but he's actually he runs the ball like a running back, and he doesn't just run it as a running back out of the backfield, but once he catches the ball, when you line him up as a wide receiver, once he catches the ball, he runs like a running back. So he is the perfect hybrid player right now of whatever you're doing on defense to defend Deebo, it's wrong because they'll put him somewhere else and you're screwed.
We've seen teams play with this concept before. I like that the Niners are dedicated to it, right? A lot of times you see teams and they're like, oh, well, we'll give the receiver 8 to 10 carries in this one game. And then the next game, they just don't do it for whatever reason, game plan oriented. But the Niners are dedicated to it because it's effective, as Renner's tweet shows.
Because he's the player, right? It's one thing conceptually this works, right? You can do this with almost anybody, and it is a thing that causes problems for defense. Pick a wide receiver and put him in the backfield. It will be a productive concept generally, right? It becomes way better if you find a guy that's actually suited to doing that, and is a genuine kind of hybrid matchup problem. Ty Montgomery was particularly good at this because he was kind of a unique hybrid type of player. Deebo Samuel is way better than Ty Montgomery. So every kind of step up the ladder in terms of suitability and skill set that you do to take advantage of a thing that's already an edge just magnifies that. Deebo Samuel is a force multiplier for this concept that generally functions and is a problem for defenses. So all of a sudden, the whole thing together in San Francisco is a nightmare for anybody.
All right, let's go to the final game of the weekend. The Pittsburgh Steelers and the Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs win 42-21. Steelers had a game, man. They made a stop early on. Felt like they were hanging tough after 6 plays. And they dragged that into the second quarter. Go up 7-0 with a fumble 6 to TJ Watt. But boy, the Pittsburgh offense just couldn't do anything. And then eventually the Pittsburgh defense couldn't do anything. Kansas City remembered that they're the Kansas City Chiefs and they're crazy explosive and unstoppable. So that's what happened. Patrick Mahomes finishes with 404 yards and 5 touchdowns. There was also an early interception there. So a lot of things were happening for Pittsburgh, right? When you describe how could Pittsburgh get the upset, you need TJ Watt to dominate probably. You need to have a turnover or 2, and you need a whole bunch of luck and stuff to happen, right? That was happening through about, 16, 17 minutes into the game, whatever it
Yeah.
was, early into the second quarter. You had a 2 turnovers by the Steelers. The Steelers turned the Chiefs over twice, 1 interception and 1 fumble return for a touchdown. That's even better. But boy, Kansas City just came back with a vengeance, started flying around the field, chucking it around, and it was all over from there.
Yeah, I mean, we said going into this game, this should have been a beatdown. There's very little way that the Steelers win this game. If they are going to do it, they were going to need, like Mahomes has been putting the ball in harm's way a couple of times a game in recent weeks. If the Steelers turn those over, if they get a couple of turnovers, that's, possessions that they need, and their defense plays lights out. Those are the kinds of things they need. So I tweeted just before halftime, the Steelers got the turnovers they need, right? They got 2 of them in the first half. They even scored on one of them. So 2 turnovers, including a defensive score. They were still about to go into the half down 2 touchdowns. And, they chose to take the ball to start the game. So they're giving the ball straight back to Kansas City at the start of the third quarter. Like, that's it. You fired your best shot. It's not enough. Now you just have to chew out the final 30 minutes of the game and wait to go home. That's basically this game in a nutshell. Like, everything went right for Pittsburgh. All the things they needed to have any shot of this game broke their way, and they still weren't even close to bridging the gap between them and Kansas City, because the Pittsburgh offense, for not just this game, but like down the stretch, has been an exercise in depressive play. Like, it's just been revolting to watch. It's been like Roethlisberger at one point was like 15 attempts for like 25 yards or something. Sad.
Let me find my tweet with the breakdown. What was he?
He was under 2 yards per attempt for a long period.
At one point, Big Ben was 6 for 15 for 23 yards and -11 on sacks. And over the last 3 weeks, I honestly didn't think it was his worst performance. Right? Yeah. We had seen comparable or worse in the Browns game on Monday Night Football and then the Ravens game last weekend. Big Ben had a fantastic career. I mean, he was really good. He was an aggressive downfield thrower. It is tough to unsee the number of one-step slants that he's thrown over the last 2 years, though. It is tough to unsee the 2-yard passes, not screens, not like this is a called screen and you throw it short because that's what the play, but like choosing to throw like the 2-yard, 3-yard quick out, the one-step slant, and just the painful Steelers offense.
They were kind of struggling with this a bit on the broadcast last night as well. It's like, how do you reconcile what we're seeing right now from Ben Roethlisberger with the player he used to be, which is becoming harder and harder to remember the more you're watching this guy? And they were like, when you all the pump fakes, like he has the best pump fake of all time. All these plays he used to make where, like Al was describing it as like trying to tackle an apartment building, right? Like these guys just trying to grab hold of him fighting out of all these plays, moving the defense with that pump fake, delivering a pass downfield. Like, he was such a great quarterback, but I can't think of a quarterback that's gone out in a more kind of legacy damaging way than Roethlisberger. Like, I know they're in the playoffs, and that's an achievement based off how bad that team is this year, but he's just been so miserable to watch certainly down the stretch, but even like extended, like the more unkind of the PFF people have been ragging on Roethlisberger for like 2 years now, but certainly down the stretch with like the last 5 weeks, he's been averaging like 4 something yards per attempt. They're just not even taking, they don't take deep shots. When he takes a deep shot, it's like, oh, if you just put that 10 yards further out in front of the receiver, it had a chance. You know what I mean? It has been genuinely sad to watch him go out this way, because I think his career deserved better. But like, that's the difference. And this was the same thing with the first Chiefs game, right? The Chiefs and the Steelers played a few weeks ago, and you're like, the 2 players that are supposedly playing quarterback for these 2 teams are not playing the same sport. Like, Patrick Mahomes is out there doing all the crazy things that Mahomes does, making magic happen. And Roethlisberger is just standing there, like, trying desperately to make the pain end. If I just throw 7 more, like 2-yard plays, we can get out of here and I can go home. And even like the Sunday Night Football, like, the publicity images they draw up, and it's like Mahomes with the mean mug. And then it's Roethlisberger with this kind of weird grimace on his face. It's like, that's the face of a guy who thought he was going to be on a beach sipping drinks now. Like, he didn't want to be there. I honestly, it's sort of facetious and jokey, but I honestly think there's some truth to that. That like, they did not think they were going to be in the postseason. They weren't supposed to be in the postseason. It required like a 6% win probability, Jacksonville upsetting the Colts. And all of a sudden they have to go and like haul ass to Kansas City in the cold and play against a team that they know are going to beat them by like 3, 4, 5 scores. And they've just got to endure it and get to the end. And that's what it was. Like, the Steelers offense was just killing time until this game was over.
The other thing, I think, why perhaps some of the PFF colleagues of ours might be dancing on Big Ben's grave is because there's still like a group of Pittsburgh beat writers and stuff who are like, Big Ben still looks great. I mean, look, you just let him call his own plays. He's chucking around the yard. Like, they want to blame Matt Canada in the offense, which might be, I mean, it could be horrible anyway. But Matt Canada has also been given Big Ben, who is a shell of himself from the last few years, in an offensive line that really can't pass protect over 2.3 seconds. So you almost have to just get rid of the ball there. And then when they do get rid of the ball, you know, our guy Deontay Johnson keeps dropping it. And Chase Claypool, I continue to contend, chuck it up to him 10 times a game. You don't have to catch 10 of them. You just have to catch 3 of them. And this offense is different. It's ugly and it's disgusting, but just that's your best chance at big plays. And Claypool's inconsistent at the catch point. I mean, there's not much to work with in this offense is my point. But I also think that's why, like, you know, our PFF colleagues, they always like to push back on, people saying Big Ben's still okay.
It is kind of sad because you think back to that, you know, the Super Bowl win against Arizona, like that throw to Santonio Holmes in the back of the end zone. That's one of the greatest throws in NFL history. One of the greatest catches in NFL history. One of the greatest plays, period, in NFL history. Like, Roethlisberger is responsible for so many incredibly and good moments. And at his peak was such a good quarterback. And it's just so hard to remember that now because of what's happened in the last, let's say, the second half of the season for charity's sake. But the way they went out was just this miserable whimper. And, you know, Deontay Johnson forgetting how to catch the ball again. There's sort of an argument of how important drops are. You know, it's obviously more important to get open. It's more important to be able to make big plays. But when this is your offense, like, drops are critical. You can't drop the ball because there's no efficiency here. We actually need every single one of these positive plays. If I get the ball to you on a slant, it's a serious achievement. You need to catch that ball. Otherwise we are dead. Like, this drive's done. The other area, we've danced on Roethlisberger's grave enough. The other area I think that they deserve criticism for is they chose to receive the ball. They won the toss, chose to take the ball to start the game. And look, there's analytics and football people, right, argue about a lot of things. When do you go for it on 4th down? Like, when do you go for 2? And there's a bunch of things that are kind of counterintuitive. And the football people, they're like, yeah, you know, there's a guy in my ear giving me the numbers and when I should go for it. But I bring in the sort of football feel stuff. You know, is my left guard having a bad day? Is the weather? All that kind of stuff, right? There are elements of legitimacy to that. And there's sort of debates and how much, like, this is one of those things that isn't really up for debate. Like, it's not, there's no football guy argument that makes this a good decision. It is just a thing you do now that if you win the toss, you defer because there is a chance that you can steal an extra possession if you are the team that finishes the first half with the ball and then gets the ball back at the start of the third quarter.
But by the way, I think mostly because you want the extra possession in the second half rather than the first half. There's a chance you're going to end up with the same number of possessions at the end of the game, but you'd rather have an extra one in the second half.
There is, but there's also a chance that you get an extra one, which is like, that's the point. There's no chance if you take it, like, there's no way you get the extra possession. You might get the same number, but you don't get the extra one, which you can get if you defer. Like, that's why it's an edge. It's just one of those things.
I mean, technically you can, because you could have one extra one in the first half and then the same in the second half. I'm just saying you'd rather have your extra possession in the second half, if anything, when you know more about the game.
Yeah, but you have the ability to control gaming an extra possession as opposed to just relying on it being lucky.
Right. I don't think this is crazy, though, just because I am Mr. Defer. I am team defer. I also have to remind people the NFL didn't even allow you to defer until like 2008. So when you say, hey, they won the toss and elected to receive, they had to receive until 2007 or 2008, whenever the NFL changed that rule. It was ridiculous. It was weird. It was not the way they do it in Madden, where you actually got to pick kick or receive. In this case, the Chiefs have been so dominant on their first drive that it's not, to me, it wasn't the craziest thing in the world. The alternative there, though, is if you're in a tough environment on the road, you never want to take the ball because that's when the crowd is at its hottest, straight out of the parking lot to start the game. There's a chance that they're off getting a beer or something at halftime and that they're not as crazy. So there are these like nuances to that discussion. At the bottom line is Pittsburgh was overmatched. It didn't matter anyway, but I see what you're saying.
And you took the ball, went 3 and out, and gave them the ball immediately anyway. Like, this is the absolute worst thing you could possibly have done. And again, like, everything went your way other than that in the first quarter, first half, when you were still going to go in down multiple scores and immediately giving the ball to Kansas City again. Like, this was the reason nobody wanted this game, right? Nobody wanted the Steelers in the postseason because this was going to happen. It was inevitable.
So I think this was the microcosm here for the Steelers of all the things they did this offseason, as far as drafting the first round running back and all that stuff. I did think that they had more work to do in the secondary. And I know this is the Chiefs and all that stuff, but Chiefs had 200. Mahomes finishes with 404 yards, 256 yards after the catch. 64% of his yards came after the catch. Once the Chiefs started, not running wildcat and fumbling twice on the same play, there were massive holes in this Pittsburgh Steelers defense. And I don't care how good TJ Watt is. He's great. But you literally can't win every rep. You can't. And I thought, the Steelers game plan wise, as the Chiefs started to figure things out, Chris did a great job showing like, hey, when TJ Watt goes inside, Mahomes just reads it and he rolls out. And this was old school Mahomes with 4 big time throws, a 3rd and 20, putting it right. There were holes in this defense, but Mahomes was taking advantage of them with the big time throws down the field. I thought the stop and go to Pringle for a touchdown was great. I mean, I thought that's one thing. I think Mahomes has not played as well this year overall compared to his first 3 years as starter. But the timing and rhythm go ball, I thought, has been better at times for Mahomes. I thought you saw that. But this was old school Chiefs where, all right, cover all these guys. We're faster than you. And it's also what we saw down the stretch, which was Mecole Hardman is a problem. Byron Pringle is a problem. Jerick McKinnon is now a problem. Adding a true scat back to this offense where you're going to give him room as a runner and as a receiver. Like, he's going to cause problems here as a shifty, fast running back. All of a sudden, the Chiefs at one point looked like they were really lacking playmakers beyond Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. I think they've started to emerge during the second half of the year as they were figuring things out offensively.
Jerick McKinnon is a better player than Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Like, there's been all this discussion about, they're missing Clyde Edwards-Helaire. They're down their primary running back. And Jerick McKinnon has been kind of an afterthought because the dude has dealt with so many injuries and all this kind of stuff throughout his career. But like, if you go back to the reason that guy got a big contract in San Francisco, he was a really good player in Minnesota. He, if he's healthy, is the best running back that Kansas City has. If they sort of stumbled into an extra playmaker out of the backfield in McKinnon, that's a big boost for this Kansas City offense. That makes them more dangerous than if they were, if they had their ideal personnel out there and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Like, they potentially upgraded with that injury.
It is. Go back and listen to everyone's analysis, including our own, when they drafted Clyde Edwards-Helaire and say, okay, forget the fact that it's not something we would do drafting a running back in the first round, but the skill set that Edwards-Helaire is supposed to bring as a pass catcher that could line up everywhere, some speed and some tackle breaking ability. That's Jerick McKinnon, but better, as you said, because boy, his speed to the edge is incredible. And then you see the way the Chiefs, as creative as it gets, I thought they were getting a little bit too cute when they ran Wildcat, and that was the double fumble and TJ Watt fumble 6. But then they get into the red zone. Mahomes had another beautiful underhand touchdown. That's great. At least his overhand touchdowns were impressive, so it wasn't completely, scheme and playmaker driven stats for Mahomes in this game. He was good. But he had the underhand touchdown. You've got Travis Kelce running the Kelce cat and, passing out of it and all that stuff. I mean, I do think they get too cute in the red zone sometimes, but when it works, either way, it's putting a lot on defenses to try to defend, and it just gives you a lot more to think about now as they go into play to host Buffalo.
Yeah, I think that becomes such a fun matchup. I'm really excited for that one.
So we'll talk plenty about Bills Chiefs. The last time they played, this is what's interesting to me. The last time they played was when the Chiefs they had 2, 3, 4 busted coverages per game. Josh Allen, when you talk about Josh Allen games, right? I think people come out of the Saturday night game and it's like, well, Josh Allen, that's what he does every week. Like, he has not played like that every week the way he did against the Patriots. But on Sunday Night Football against the Chiefs, he was incredible. The Chiefs were horrible defensively. Remember that he had like at one point 7 completions for like 230 yards. I assume the Chiefs are going to be better than that defensively. So this should be a much tighter game. It's a game between two of the best teams in the NFL, Chiefs Bills. It's going to be awesome, and it's the last game of the weekend next week on Sunday evening. Not a late game. We get the 6:30 start, which I love. Don't have to stay up too late on the Sunday nights here, but it's going to be good. Chiefs are looking a lot more like the Chiefs, and perhaps at the right time.
Yeah, they are. The Chiefs, I think, I genuinely think there's a good case that the Raiders fixed the Chiefs, right? Just playing a bad team or a bad defense that wasn't going to give you any kind of problems on defense got them into a groove that they weren't in until those games. And the rest of the league owes the Raiders a serious debt of gratitude because Kansas City was in a funk that they're not in anymore. And as much like the other point I wanted to bring up about Josh Allen is that, remember, Mina Kimes had said that her kind of take that she kind of believes that is a bit spicy is that the Bills need to build a dome to maximize Josh Allen's kind of play. And I disagreed on the basis that I think the weather only enhances Josh Allen. Like any weather you put out there, the gap between Allen and the next quarterback only grows because he can do things that other quarterbacks can't. He got an arm to cut through the wind. He's one of the best rushing threats in the NFL if the game gets forced to the ground. Like, he's running over linebackers, he's juking cornerbacks out of their shoes. Like, the dude is Lamar Jackson is the best rushing threat as a quarterback in the NFL. I honestly think Allen is number 2. Like, he's devastating. So I actually think the more weather, the better. If every game he plays in is a ridiculous weather game, Josh Allen might be the best quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, I think and Mina's point's interesting too because, like I said, Allen hasn't played as well as he did the other night, the entire season. Some of his worst statistical games or even graded games are in weather, right? In rain games or in snow games. I think if the point is like Allen's statistical legacy is going to get hurt by playing outdoors in Buffalo, I think that's fair. The same way I think Drew Brees and Peyton Manning benefited from their beautiful, pristine passing conditions, even though they're both awesome. If that's the point, that's one thing. If it's Josh Allen winning games, I think you're right. It's an advantage because it helps the Buffalo defense, right? I mean, weather and conditions do matter on both sides. It's going to help the Buffalo defense, but it's also going to give Allen the advantage over like Mac Jones. I think Mac Jones played well, all things considered. He had a bunch of drops in there, but there were definitely some passes that, were dying on him that were not dying on Josh Allen. So,
yeah, there was a couple of those plays in there from Mac Jones that looked like last season Drew Brees, where it just, an out route that just doesn't get there, it just dies, and the receiver's now trying to dig it out from the floor. Didn't happen that much, but there was at least 2 of them in there that you're like, oh yeah, that's the arm strength thing.
It's only been 2 hours and 4 minutes. We got to drag this thing out for another 26 or.
We almost got it done. We almost got it inside of 2 minutes, but or 2 hours. But yeah. The people know us. They knew we wouldn't get there.
Yeah, I think it was your Terminator analogy that
was worth it, though. That was worth it.
It was worth it, but that's what put us over the top. Anyway, we did it in under 2.5 hours. Those 5 games. We will be back on Wednesday. We'll be talking Rams Cardinals. Hopefully, the snow will be subsided by then. Sam, we'll be back in the office on Wednesday. But we appreciate everybody tuning in, especially early on a Monday morning here. And again, we'll be back Wednesday, recapping Rams Cardinals, hitting on all the biggest NFL topics throughout the year. Always some off-season discussion now within our podcast. And don't forget, we're giving you 25% off over at PFF.com. The grades are coming through for wildcard weekend, 25% off using the promo code NFL Pod. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. We'll see you again on Wednesday.